me on track.
All right, good morning. Welcome back, everyone. It is Friday. I got my regular guest, Emily Lopez, on, and I have a new guest on today, a new member in school, but we got Gus on. So, morning, Gus.
Morning. How are we doing today?
Yeah, so why don't you quickly give a maybe 60, 90-second spiel on who you are and where you invest for the audience?
All right. Yeah. So my name is Gus Ofili. I'm a real estate agent and investor in the state of Maine. I mostly, for my real estate portfolio, what that entails is 7 units, 6 units. I have single families, duplexes, triplexes. I also have mobile homes that are on their own land, what tend to be good cash flowing assets. As a real estate agent, I've sold over 450 houses. I've been in a real estate agent since 2019. Other than that, I'm a father, I'm a son, I'm a husband, and I'm just happy to be here today. So thank you very much for having me.
All right. This should be a fun one. I do see someone already saying, all right, Gus. I see Norman Hardman saying good morning to you. But yeah, this is going to be a fun episode. I thought maybe make it a little Christmas theme, so the 12 days of Christmas, but we're going to kind of make this and relate it to your 12 steps for your first rental. So maybe Emily, do you want to kind of start with maybe the first step we kind of had listed, or did you have a different step that we had on?
No, I'm sticking to it, man. So Mark in his infinite wisdom, he gave us a template to keep us on task for a 12 steps outline. So I'm just going to go. I have this. If I'm looking down, it's because I have it, because as we all know, I can go off on a tangent. So day one, decide. So he has the 12 days, 12 steps outline for buying a rental property. So the first step, first day, decide why you want a rental. Do you want cash flow? Do you want tax benefits? Do you want financial freedom? I think also deciding kind of your strategy, I think, is important. We talked about life balance yesterday. So do you want to have 200 properties and you trying to hit this crazy level? Or do you want 10, kind of the Dion style, like you talk about, where you don't want as many, but you want to really tactically have those and have a little more work-life balance? So I think that's really important, is like, why are you doing this and what do you want from it?
That is a great way to start. So, Gus, did you have any thoughts on that first step, or day one, I should say?
Yeah, exactly what she said. What does your map look like, and what are you looking to currently change from where you're at right now? Do you want to trade off as far as time? You want to spend more time with the family? You got to figure those things out first, because if you don't have a plan and you just jump into something, it's going to be difficult to be successful as far as it.
I think the one thing I want to say is we are primarily saying real estate for your first rental, but I think I would even go further and say maybe decide what asset class, right? So it may not even be real estate for yourself. I mean, I know we're kind of geared toward real estate, but for some, that's not the best asset class for themselves, right? Like especially if they're thinking about self-managing and things like that, right? So I think even before you decide on a rental, it's going to have to be, is this the right asset class for yourself?
When you started, Gus, because I listened to your podcast episode that kind of had your origin story on, it was bigger podcast, is the rookie one, right? I always mix up all their podcasts
We
where you
sound
talk
like
about.
superheroes now, origin stories and
Well, when you started, he was an agent and then he bought this property. And did you know, when you thought, was it just like, you know what, this is a good opportunity, I'm going to buy it? Or did you kind of know, hey, because you have a lot of properties now, you have 70 something properties, which I feel like that's a lot. Did you know you wanted that many, or did you just think this is a good investment? This is my foot in the door.
oh, is he frozen?
I think
I
we've
think he
frozen.
may have froze. Okay, well, hopefully we. Oh, there he
And
is.
we're talking about the first one. Is that correct?
Yeah, like when you started, were you that tactical about it? Did you kind of know, or did you figure it out as you went?
I think his Wi-Fi is. You there, Gus? All right. Well, okay. All right. Well, hopefully he would get him back, and then we can dig into the question you're having
What
for
was
him.
your
But
plan, Mark? Because when you decided you were going to start buying, and I know you've talked like a little bit about it, but you're always so quiet, and then
well,
everyone else is
you guys
talking.
do a great job. Well, yeah, for me, I was always, I tell people I was headed just down the typical for my pension, right? So the fire department has great benefits, and I was just kind of locked into that. Going to do my 25 years, pension, traditional, retirement plan, 401k, or, for the fire department, we have, 457, deferred comp. But that was my plan. And, I had my primary residence, and it was basically, I thought I was on cruise control. I had my primary residence, my pension set up, and that's the plan. And, 2020 happened, the world shut down, and it definitely made me look at things a lot different as far as how risky I was being as far as having one stream of income per se. But look, Gus, we got you back, looks like.
Yeah, we're having some windstorms up here, so I do apologize.
Oh.
But I think I heard the gist of the question. So when I first got into being an investor, the key thing is I was an agent. So I was watching all these other investors, they kind of were like just chilling while I was on the road 24/7.
Grinding.
They would yep. I was on the road 24/7. The thing I noticed about them is I helped them buy a place for like 30 grand. And then probably 6 months later, we're at the closing table and they're selling it from 280. And if you're not aware of your surroundings, you got to be like, okay, he's making a lot more money than I am as far as what he's doing on his end. I want to learn a little bit more. So helping investors as far as ones that flipped and ones that did rentals, I started picking up. I was like, okay, this is money they're getting every month. What if I break my leg? What if something happens? So my first investment property was something I was trying to sell to someone else. The deal didn't go through, and I sat with it. I was like, is this like a calling? Should I just go ahead and take it? Now, I would say it's not the best deal in the world, but when that investor was telling me, hey, Gus, it was an off-market deal. This is a pretty good deal that you found. I was like, all right, cool. So once that deal broke up and it didn't work, I'm like, it's a 5-unit. I'm going to go ahead and take it. And that's how I got introduced to the commercial world and everything like that. So sometimes you plan to do something and magically it just lays in your lap, and then you got to make that judgment call. And when that does land in your lap, you got to go ahead and take advantage of it. What I see a lot is people stall, and then they don't take advantage of it, and they're kicking themselves in the butt later on.
Yep. And I think the great thing about that is there's so many people, I see this with agents in the business, or I see contractors, people that are independent contractors, because like Marc was talking about when you were cutting out, he had a compensation plan, a 457 deferred compensation as a firefighter. I see a lot of people that own their own business, or they're independent contractors, or they're salespeople, and they're making a really good income as long as they're working. But when you retire, or when you want to be able to retire, you're only making money as long as you're grinding, unless you're investing that money. And so the scales fell from your eyes and you saw, like, hey, you were killing it as an agent. You were selling a ton of houses, but only while you were just hustling all the time. And I think there's agents and contractors and car salesmen that do that their whole lives. And then they get to a certain age and like, yeah, I made a heck ton of money, but I did nothing with it all this time.
Where did it go?
I just want to say, Gus looks like he has a big fan club tuning in. So I see quite a few people saying Gus is a beast. Gus is so right. So all these people tuning in, thanks for stopping by. I also put Emily's YouTube channel in the chat. So those of you stopping by, please jump over there, hit the like and subscribe. And I also put Gus's Instagram page. So if anyone here is not following Gus, please go follow him there and connect with him. And if you're in the school community, reach out to him. But yeah. Oh, so you think we covered step one enough, or okay?
And I just want to shout out, Gus, when I listened to your podcast episode before, you said when you started as an agent, you were still really active on Facebook. Are you still active on there as an investor? Are you sharing a lot of content on Facebook as well?
100%. I mean, people don't know what you're doing unless you're out and about and you're promoting that. And I hear a lot of times people like, oh, I'm humble, or I'm thinking. Being humble don't put food on the table. I'm sorry.
There you go.
So I got to go ahead and let people know, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is a leak that happened in one of the buildings we're rehabbing. I'm keeping people updated as far as what I feel like social media is like our own TV channel. And when you come to my channel, I want what I do right front and center. So yes, I'm definitely active on those markets.
Cool. So go check him out on Facebook too, guys. Okay, number 2, day 2. So we got through day 1, day 2. Fix your financial foundation. So sometimes you decide you want to buy property or whatever you want to invest in, and you can't. You got to do some work to get things where they need to be, debt to income ratios, credit scores, any of that. So yeah, I guess, does anybody want to start on that? Mark, Gus, either of you want to pick up on there?
Yeah, you need money. I mean, I think the biggest thing is people, you see all these nice, cool Instagram things. Oh, you don't need money. Well,
How you do?
my opinion, this is just, I don't want to speak for the other two. You need money. And you could get money by what you do for everyday living. Go ahead.
It's too risky not to. The people,
Yes.
if you put all your money into buying something and you have an emergency, you're going to lose that one thing. It's better to wait till you have a little bit. Don't open your, I mean, yes, like you said, everyone's trying to sell a no money down program, or you don't have to have money. But if that furnace goes out and you don't have the money, or your roof gets, like you said, you have windstorms right now. If your roof blows off and it's not, you got to have something.
Then a big factor is credit. I'm right now, that's a thing that, I'm trying to work my way out of a situation that just recently happened to me. But at the beginning, it's going to be hard to go ahead and get properties and go through a bank or even a private or hard money person, even if the deal is good, if on paper you don't look good. So you got to get yourself to a particular point where on paper you look awesome. So they want to go ahead and continue to do business with you or start doing business with you.
Yeah. And one thing you mentioned this too, when you started, you were an agent and you had switched jobs. This happened to me too. So I had worked as a statutory employee for the county, and then I became an agent, and then I bought a real estate brokerage. So instead of being an agent, I went from being a 1099 agent independent contractor to buying a brokerage in an S corporation. And so I was making more money than I had ever made before, but I had to wait those 2 years because they want to have 2 years of that income history on tax returns, especially if you're in sales, to show that it's reliable. And I went from sales to paying myself out of my corporation like an employee. So even if you have the money, there's all these little hoops you have to jump through if you're going to do a traditional conventional loan. So if you want to make the plan, I always tell people, find the lender you want to work with that's willing to take the time with you, because sometimes it's just, okay, here's your roadmap. I have a lender that's really great locally, and they'll help people say, okay, here's our 6-month plan, or here's our 1-year plan, but here's what you have to do and get in order to jump through the hoops if you're starting with conventional loans. And you got to do it. You got to play the game.
Yep, that's normally what, like, people at the beginning, that's the big push I'm trying to give them. Just get in there, talk to a lender. The last thing I would say is, and I'm not the hugest, biggest Dave Ramsey fan, you got to be good with money. You can't, we talked about saving money, but there's also discipline with money. You got to know what is important. If you want to jump in this game as far as investing, a lot of the things you were doing before, I don't want to name things because people could be watching and doing it right now, but you got to cut a lot of the nonsense off. And you got to be like, okay, this is my plan. Everything that doesn't go with this particular plan right now, I got to cut it off. And I could circle back in a couple of years to it, but I got to be disciplined with money right now.
Yep.
I want to say, so Brady Morgan, who is on the Idaho-Wyoming border, I believe, has been tuning in recently, but it says, get your own house in order before getting more houses, right? So I think you guys both kind of touched on it. So let's say someone does have some consumer debt still yet. Would you think it's better for them to get rid of all of that consumer debt before investing? Or what would be your guys' take on that?
For me, I think what she ended up saying is talk to a lender, see where you're at. Once you know where you're at, you know what you could afford, you know what payments look like potentially, then you could see what your portfolio looks like as far as what you look like on paper. And then you could go ahead and, add that together and see how you pick your poison. So you technically don't have to pay all your debt off. You just got to know where you land and can I be able to afford this property if I wanted to.
Stories with Colleen says, Gus took off like a rocket and he's a real investor, unlike the gurus. Gus lives it every day, real assets, real wealth, and real legacy for his family. Oh, very cool. So let's say step 2, right, was financial foundation. Would you say what's worse, buying too early or waiting too long?
What do you mean by too early?
So, to this point, like, let's say they do have some consumer debt. maybe they don't know exactly, they haven't done all the research, like you folks are saying, talking to maybe multiple lenders, right, to see who's the best fit. Maybe they go out and just work with the first lender they reach out to, right? They just went online and Googled what's the best 5 markets. Now they pick the market from there, right? And then let's say that, like Gus said, you have to know money in a sense too, right? So maybe this person has already bad consumer spending habits, right? And now they jump in to buy real estate, right? So would you say that is too early? Is it better for them to just get in and learn, or should they wait and kind of, like you said, get a better understanding of money first?
Well, I think too early. So I think it depends, kind of is my answer. But even if you have some consumer debt, if you still qualified for the mortgage, like, I mean, there's a point where someone's going to tell you no because you're fine. Like if your financing is way off, so you're not that too early because you at least were able to get the loan. The other thing is, like I always tell people, if you're in a hole, stop digging. So if you're going to get your SHIT together and you maybe have consumer debt, but you're going to stop making those bad decisions, but you are going to start sacrificing, you buy a property and then you don't keep buying junk and you move forward and you're working on paying it down, but you qualify, time in the market is almost always what's going to help you. The other thing I always like to remember on deals, if you have money, like Gus said, you can't do it with no money, or you shouldn't do it with no money. If you have a bad deal, hasn't happened to me yet, I'm sure eventually there's going to be a deal that I lose money on. But I always remind myself, I'm not going to lose it all. Like I might lose $10,000, $20,000, but if I buy a $150,000 house and I take a loss on it, I'm not going to lose 150 grand. I'm going to lose like $10,000 or $15,000. And so as long as you have other money, you're working, you're getting your financial house even more in order, there is going to be a loss at some point in your investment journey, and it's not going to crush you. And so I feel like usually time in the market salves the wounds, and so you qualified for a loan and start making those good choices moving forward.
I'm going to agree with her. The earlier you get in, but you have to be prepared. So I don't want to overlook that. But the earlier you get in, you buy that property, you're going to start taking your lumps. But I much rather take my lumps in 2020 than I held off to 2023. Now the price market is a whole different thing. I could have had 3 years of a great interest rate, of learning, getting learning experience, and compared to coming in a little bit later, maybe I'm a little bit more seasoned in my brain, but I'm still going to go ahead and take those lumps once I take over that property. So I 100% agree with Emily.
All right. So before we get on to step 3, I do want to touch on real quickly. So like for this part of, getting your finances set. So like Gus, and I think Emily touched on it a little bit. It was like pulling teeth to get you to test out school, right? And it was $20, right? And your kind of response was you never paid for a course or something like that, I believe. So to that point, would you recommend or tell someone maybe getting a course is a good way to start, or would you say, like you said, take your lumps and learn?
I'd much rather people take their lumps and learn. That's just me. I don't really be trusting people on the internet and out there what they be telling me. Why are you showing me Lamborghinis is around? You're supposed to be telling me about investing in real estate. I don't care about that. Right now, I'm so hungry just to survive and change my life situation. Why do I care about Lamborghinis and fancy cars? I don't care about that. But on the opposite side, what I say is, if you can find the right person. So when I sat back and I watched Zuber and I watched his platform, he was just giving info. He was never posting things to hook people in. And then you find out it's $20. I'm like, yo, what can I lose for $20? Look where $20 has gotten me. I'm sitting with all-stars right now on this platform. By $20, I put down and Mark, when me and you were talking, I was asking a million questions. There's a reason why I'm asking the million questions, because I want to make sure where I'm settling, where I'm paying my first dollar to, is this going to be able to help me? And I would say this has been one of the biggest things as far as my career, to be able to talk to different people who are doing the same thing that I'm doing to push me farther. So if you can find the right person, yes. I would say 90% of those people on social media are not the right people. You just got to continue to ask questions. Are they there for you, or are they there to get money out of your pocket?
And do they look wealthy because they're selling a course and that's where all their money came from? And are they actually successful as an investor? Because you over here with 70 something doors, you're not saying you couldn't, you're not selling a course, you're just working and you're doing it, right? But then you have somebody who's selling a course and it's like, okay, like a lot of the real estate educators, you as a real estate agent, you probably have seen this, how to be a successful agent. They're teaching real estate coaching. They haven't even been an agent for 10, 15, 20 years. So what are you teaching that's recent and modern and new? Or like, I think you said everyone can be an instructor. Everyone can have a class. Everyone can teach a course. But would you be better because some of these courses are expensive and some of these masterminds are expensive. And someone asked me to participate in one because they're just selling it, right? And I'm like, that's a down payment on a house. Like, no, I'd rather tell someone to go buy a property than pay to participate in your program.
100%. I'm the last thing I'm going to say. How does it make sense? I'm paying someone $20,000 when I could take that $20,000, I can invest in myself. And people tend to downplay YouTube and be like, "Oh, you can't just go by YouTube." Okay, there's some truth to that. But I'd much rather keep my $20,000, put a down payment on a house, and watch YouTube from morning to night, and try to direct message people on social media platforms. See if I can set up a call so I can talk to them. I think people tend to be too lazy and they just want to go. I hope that's not rude, but I think people tend to be too lazy. They want to throw their money down, but they don't want to make themselves the weapon. That's my whole thing. If you make yourself the weapon, you don't have to rely on anyone else.
I'm writing that down. Make yourself the weapon. That's good.
Absolutely, yeah. And Sergeant Jack Q, I believe, says liked. If you are in a hole, stop digging. So, hey, Tiffany's here tuning in from Emily's channel. Looks like she says she agrees with Gus. But yeah, let's move on a little bit. So step 3, I believe, was pick one strategy. So I heard Gus already mention BRRRR strategy. Emily, how would you touch this subject of picking one strategy, or what would you say is your strategy?
I would say I don't know if I agree with this all the way.
Ooh, okay.
So I have a few strategies, but we started buy and hold. And that was because, if you're going to BRRRR or if you're going to flip, usually the good deals are cash deals and you have to have enough money to buy it in cash, or hard money, which I was not comfortable with or that familiar with when I started, and higher interest rates. So I started with, I would buy a rental property, buy and hold, because it was something that was financeable and maybe it needed some work. I can make it nicer, but I'm not buying a huge distressed property that I can add a lot of value with. So we started with that. Then short-term rentals came along, and I'm not in a destination area by any means, but we have a lot of traveling workers, and I'm in Wyoming. So in the summer, people coming through the national parks, people on their road trips, we're right on I-80. So we had a lot of overnight stays. So for a handful of years, I had a few short-term rentals, and those made sense at that time in my life because they made more cash flow than my other rentals did. So I had long-term, I had short-term. Then I got to the point where I was doing more, and short-term didn't make sense for me because it was a lot more labor intensive and I couldn't find good, reliable help. So cleaners and stuff like that. But then I started flipping a little bit. And so I got rid of the short-term rentals, but it made sense at that time in my life when I had the time for it. And now I buy and hold, and I also flip so that I can re-inject that capital back in to do more buy and hold. Yes, I would love to hold everything, but sometimes you want to be able to keep that momentum with that money, and you can't BRRRR all the way depending on where you buy and what your market's like. And so I buy and hold and I flip because those balances, I think for me, is the right balance right now. So I don't necessarily think you have to pick one. Now, I don't like when people, this one's hard, I didn't make as much as I wanted, so I'm going to do this one. Like, you have to be educated and tactical about your choices, but I don't necessarily think you have to pick one. Like Gus said, I think it might have been before we started recording, he does it if it works. Like, I have some multifamily, I have some single family. If it makes sense and it makes money, okay, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, so I'm gonna agree. And here's what: when I first got into investing, I put 20% down. So I didn't start BRRRRing then. I was like, hey, I'm making a good amount of money as far as as far as an agent. I got the 20% down. I'm gonna do it there. Then after putting 20% down 4 times, I'm like, wait a minute, my money is going into my buildings and I'm losing capital. Then I'm like, okay, so let me try a different technique. Let me try the BRRRR technique. Now you do that. The first one goes good. All right, let me try to do the next one. That goes good. Now I got 2 different techniques. Then later on, I'm like, okay, would you be interested in owner financing? Yeah. Oh shoot. Okay. So let's work terms out. So it's like you take one step forward, you get comfortable. Then you take the next step, you get comfortable. So it's a slow thing. So I don't think there's one. If I'll sit here and I'll be lying. Now for me, the BRRRR is my favorite thing to do. To me, I think it has the most value. To someone else, subject to can be their thing. To someone else, owner financing can be their thing. I think what makes a good investor is if you study those crafts in each one of those realms, and if the opportunity comes your way, you're able to capitalize on whatever that way you go ahead and get that property. So if it is subject to, if it is owner financing or 20% down or the BRRRR, if you have that skill to do all 4, who cares how you get it? It's about after you get it, are you making money on it? Do you have some equity on it? And what's your long-term play with the property?
And you worked through something and then you had the capital, because usually on your first deal, unless you have, someone who's willing to loan you the money or you're comfortable with hard money, most people don't have the cash to buy a first property, like a very distressed property. And if people don't know, when I say not financeable, conventional loans have minimum condition standards of the property. And so if you're buying a really distressed property, it's going to be hard money, it's going to be a bank loan, or it's going to be cash. And so your first deal, I didn't have the cash. Now I can buy a couple ones here and there in cash, but I couldn't when I was starting. I had to buy something that was financeable.
All right, well said, both of you. So before we go to step 4, I want to get to some of the questions in the chat real quick. So Harrison, TradeBetter99, who's in Virginia, is asking, how many properties is enough to be a guru? Is it property number or cash flow? Ooh. Emily's smiling. So it seems like you have a response for this. No?
I think anybody can be what they want to be. I think it's, are people going to listen to you, and should you? Because Dion talks about how he doesn't want a lot of properties. He wants less properties and more cash flow. I just feel like, do you have some, and like, he's not even really trying to sell you anything, right? When I say guru, I'm kind of making fun of people that are trying to sell something that have no business selling it. But I think if you have something valuable to share and you're going to help people, and you help people. I just don't like when somebody actually isn't doing it. They're not in the game and they're trying to take your money to teach you to do something they're not even doing themselves. That's my only problem. If you have 3 properties, and I don't even want to put, it doesn't matter. Share your journey, share what you learned, because I can learn something from somebody buying their first property. Just document it. I just don't like when you're trying to take somebody's money and you're a scam artist. That's all I'm saying.
No, well said. Gus, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think the word guru is trash. I think it's just thrown out there to hype some people up. To this particular question, how many properties is enough to be a guru? Is it property number or cash flow? So obviously it's cash flow. That's the cash flow is what's going to carry the wealth. But I hear this a lot. And Marc, you were on a podcast before. I had to type in there and be like, some people are proud of their number. Like, I'm proud to say I have 73 doors because I went to war for those 73 doors. It just didn't fall from the sky. I'm on the search for each particular property I go ahead and I find. Now, I do understand there's some people saying, oh, I got 1,000 doors, and they may have like 5% ownership in the door. And I'm not knocking that. If that's how you go about real estate, there's a million ways to do real estate. But cash flow is the game. The person you resonate to, the person that you listen to on a daily basis, that is your guru. You know what I mean? A person that you look up to, you wish you could go jump on the phone with, that's your guru. Anyone else promoting themselves and saying they're a guru, to me, they're full of, and back to you, Marc.
No, I totally agree. I mean, well said. I think that's the hardest thing, and Emily touched on it too. Like Dion. So Dion, he almost I know he does like one-on-one calls, but he makes it a price point so that no one will do it. He almost makes it so that these people don't want to have a one-on-one call, because he's basically like, all my content has all my information, everything in my book you can find on YouTube. Maybe it's not as organized. So yeah, like Gus was saying, you might have to sit through YouTube and filter through all his content. But so yes, maybe if you want to pay for it, you can have it all organized. But basically, Dion is like, all my information is out there. You can find it if you just do the work yourself. Trisha is saying weapons always need honing stones to be sharpened. Iron sharpens iron.
100%.
Fernandog 8355 says, make yourself the weapon. Great quote, Gus. Right?
Is it Fernandog? Is it Fernando G?
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, yeah, that's why I wasn't sure. Fernand OG. Well, hopefully we said it right. Um, Brady Morgan is saying the key to determining strategy is understanding your environment, situation, competencies, and competitive advantage. Align strategies appropriately. I agree. You don't need to stick to just one. I like that. So maybe before we move on to, so maybe Emily, you can quickly kind of touch at that point that you're at right now, right? Like you're saying, you're in Wyoming, you're a contractor, you can do a lot of work yourself, but you're at this point trying to decide, should I start investing out of state, right? Because I don't do the work myself and it ties all my time up. So maybe you can touch on that, like how Brady's touching about, like, what's your competitive advantage, your situation, your environment.
So I thought maybe I had to invest out of state to make myself stop being such a micromanager and so involved in my projects. And then I've started to look into it, but it's got to make more sense too. So one thing I found is if I'm going out of state, I have to look at because Wyoming has good property taxes because we have a lot of coal, trona, mineral excision. So we have low property taxes. I can manage them myself here, and I can, even if I'm not doing the labor, I can general the project. So I'm not paying that fee. So it's got to make enough more money that it makes sense. So what I'm trying to do now is treat it like I would out of state, except for that I'm the GC or maybe doing a couple finishing things. I'm not being the person that's doing as much of the labor, and seeing if I can kind of remove myself a little bit more from the framework. So I'm hiring things out and it moves along on a different schedule. So I'm kind of like baby testing it here. Like it's a beta test. And if I can still invest here and things make sense and they cash flow, then I just need to work on me. It's a me problem, right? And so I'm just kind of working on that transition, hiring things out and trying to step back a little bit, because I can't scale if I'm going in there and doing every step of the renovation process. Yes, I'm not paying for it, but it takes me significantly longer to get a project done. So it's a transition. I'm working on it, but when you're a micromanager and you're a contractor, it's hard to pull yourself out of it.
All right. So Sergeant Jack Q, before we get to your question, I want to move on just so we make sure we get to all the steps. But step 4 would be market selection. And I think that's a great point, because Emily was just talking about she's trying to figure out if she's going to invest out of state. But choose the right market will be step 4. So like backyard versus out of state. Do you follow the math? What about emotion? So Gus, what is your thought on that? Because I believe you kind of invest primarily close to yourself, right?
Yeah. My thinking is I'm in this area, I'm familiar with it. I even started, I partnered up with my property management team to lease places. So I understood the market better. You could definitely do it in your backyard. To me, I think that's probably the more convenient way, because you're around. You could stop in on your guys. You can make sure things are going the way that they're supposed to go. Now, for people who do it from remote, what I will say is you got to be out there. Like, I don't understand how someone can just buy a place and then try to piece it together. Maybe it does work, but if sometimes there's a struggle and I'm local in the area, I can only imagine being 1,000 miles away from my investment properties, trying to figure out and trying to trust a property manager or a contractor out there. So anywhere you're looking to invest, no matter if it's local or it's far, know that area. You got to know the area. You got to know what's going for rent. You got to know what the attractions are. You got to know what keeps people there. If you don't know those things, you're not going to be successful in this game.
And I think one point here too is people, at least when I talk to people, and I bet Marc can speak to this more than anybody, of us three, people that invest out of their area, it's because it doesn't make sense to invest in their area, right?
Yep.
People in California who are like, I can't even buy a house, let alone multiple houses. Or Hawaii is getting more and more expensive, I think, and you can speak on this more. So it makes more sense. Your money goes further and gets more of a return somewhere else. So some people are forced, if they want to really be successful, to invest out of their area. So that's kind of where my thing is if I can't make more out of my area, then I need to exhaust my potential here first and then go somewhere else. But is there more I can do here? Mark, did you kind of just pretty quickly determine that money's got to do something else somewhere else to go farther?
Oh yeah, absolutely. For me, it's live where you want, invest where the numbers make sense. But I'll touch on this quickly. Is that to me, you guys both touched on it earlier too. It's really understanding yourself, though, knowing yourself. So even though the numbers may make sense, investing somewhere else, you have to have that personality that can, like I think Gus touched on, right, being 1,000 miles away. Like for example, I'm in Hawaii, I invest in Pittsburgh, so roughly 6,000 miles away from my properties. So it's kind of not everyone can deal with that type of distance or situation, right? So you really have to understand yourself, and maybe taking smaller returns is better for you because you can sleep well at night, right? So maybe you do have to invest closer to yourself, and maybe the returns will be smaller, but it allows you to sleep at night, right? So I think that's the biggest thing. So before you just go by the numbers, you also got to understand what kind of personality that you have.
Mark, if I can ask you a question, with you investing in Pittsburgh, how did you create your team? So that plays a big factor. Now, if I'm with a team that I feel 100% confident in, and their communication to me is A1 and all of that, that's going to make me sleep well at night. You know what I mean? So how did you build that foundation in Pittsburgh?
All right. So we can get back to step 4. People do have more questions of the market selection, but step 5 is build a team. So that's a perfect segue into what Gus is asking me. So for me, my friend was already investing in Pittsburgh. So my friend who's also out in Hawaii was already investing there. So to me, that is the biggest thing. Like you're saying, Gus, is building a team, building relationships. Like you said, you reached out to me on social media, things like that, right? You're looking for other investors in that market, right? So you can pick their brains. Yasik, who's in the chat, who's also going to probably pivot from Jersey and invest in outside of Pittsburgh, but in that area. He's great at networking and reaching out to people in those communities to try to find out more, right? So even like Facebook, right? You have all these private Facebook investing groups now. So you go to like Pittsburgh, you just join all these groups. So you can connect with all these different contractors and people that are investing, right? I think the thing that I see a lot of times that people struggle with is they think just finding the market is the only thing they have to do, and then they start trying to build a team after they get the property, and they don't realize that I don't like to always put it this way, but I almost feel like purchasing the property is almost the easiest step, right? As long as you have money or you figure out a way to get the property, but becoming a landlord and building your team is kind of where the work begins, right? And a lot of it has to start before you even purchase that first property, right? But I think for me, it's all about networking, reaching out to people, and then finding other investors in that area, right? Not just like like we're saying, not just the gurus. That there might be someone that's selling like how do you invest in Pittsburgh online, right? That's their course that they're selling, right? But I'd rather reach out to people that are boots on the ground and investors in that market. What about you folks?
I think just from the agent's perspective, I am not a property manager, but we did when I bought my brokerage, we offered that for a couple of years because there were so few property management options in our community. I thought we have rentals, we're used to doing this, let's add this in. We did it for a couple of years and decided, nope, this is not for us. But I always thought if I invested out of my area, there's no competition for property managers here because there's so few of them. So they can charge what they want. They can charge what fees they want. They can do whatever type of job they want to do because if you want to invest here, you only have a couple options. So I always thought if I invest somewhere, I would want to make sure there were at least maybe like 10 options of property managers, or I could find somebody like people talk about my sister lives there or a relative, depending on your state laws, they could be a statutory employee that you could hire to manage your portfolio. Because if there's no competition, like you said, if you have a great property and you can't call a handyman or a contractor to work on it, or no one wants to manage it for you and you're not there, it doesn't matter. You're going to be dealing with it, worrying about it all the time. So I think that's really something to think about is before you buy somewhere, especially if it's a smaller size market, what are my options for these services? Because they might not exist in that community.
I'm gonna kind of skip over a few of the questions. What Brady Morgan is saying, there are definite benefits to investing near where you live, and there are good markets within an hour of just about anywhere in the country. So the only thing I would say to that also is, and so like in Emily's situation, right? There's you do well in your market, and there's probably good markets within an hour, but that's not your struggle in a sense, right? Having it close to you is kind of the struggle, right? Where you can do all the work or you can drive there yourself, right? And so that I think for you, that's where you have to decide, right? Like the time and how hands-on you are going to be. Like I think you mentioned a micromanager and whatnot. So for you, it being close to you might be the struggle, right?
But it also, so I think it's internally, it's comfortable to know if something goes wrong, I can fix it. So it's just sometimes your work is external work and sometimes your work is internal work. And I think my work first is the internal work to figure out then where I go. And it's something I got to resolve either way.
All right, before we get to some more of the questions, that we'll finish up with step 5 of building a team. But maybe Gus, you can touch on, is trusting the wrong team worse than buying the wrong deal?
Ooh, trusting the wrong team versus the wrong deal. Yeah, that I'm gonna say buying the wrong deal is worse. If I buy something and I'm underwater, where's the option to go ahead and overcome that? I've had a situation where early on where I hired a guy to do drywall, and especially back then, I went with the cheaper guy than the guy that I should have went with. But those are taking your lumps as you go on, and he ended up just disappearing. And I was the guy that gave him a good chunk of money to begin with. So that was a learning experience. Now I trusted that team. They ended up biting me, and I was able to go ahead and move on. Now I may have had to make adjustments as far as we didn't have the finishes that maybe I wanted to go because I had to cut money in other places, or maybe I had to sell a few more houses, to recoup that particular money. So I much rather have a contractor who's gonna, backstab me than buy a property where there's no room to do anything at all. That's just my thoughts.
I think your team, you can change it. Like your people always say, all the fearmonger people on my YouTube channel, real estate's not a liquid asset, right? And so you can take a $5,000 loss on a drywaller or something like that, and it sucks and you can move on. But it's different to solve the problem of a bad buy. It might be a bigger process to handle that. Even if you have to sell it at a loss, it's still going to take you a little longer unless you have like an accountant. You hear about celebrities and their accountants are embezzling all their money. Like that might be a bigger problem, but I think usually when you're a small operator, you're watching things a little closer. Where if someone stole 100 grand from you, you might catch it a little faster. I don't think we're at that level, like, Mariah's accountant stealing from her or something like that.
Fernando G says, I think the wrong team could destroy you financially.
If you don't catch it quickly, I think if you catch it, you can resolve it.
So that to that point, that was going to be my next, where you have to be able to recognize that, or you have to be able to fire quickly, right? So if you have the wrong team or trust the wrong team, you have to be able to pivot right away and not try to maybe make it work, right? And try to give them enough chances. So I think that's the biggest thing. If you recognize it, you got to be able to fire quickly and pivot quickly.
But we're also looking for great deals. You know what I mean? And with having great deals, we're looking for if you're looking to keep it, a good amount of equity in there. So there is a cushion, if need be, if stuff does go wrong. So I think, once again, going back to buying the correct way, that's one of the bigger factors.
Brandon says, my regular guest on Tuesdays, Brandon B2R Investing, says, hire slow, fire faster. So let's get on to step 6 real quick. No average. whether that's, I think that's even knowing average rents, average for the returns, right? So knowing average is a great place to start. What would you guys say on that step? Maybe Gus, you can touch on that.
Yeah, you don't want to overpay. You know what I mean? You don't want to be in a situation where you have to keep this. You know, at any time, I want to be able to obtain a property, and if I do have to sell it, I'm making a good amount of profit off of it. Average deals can put you in bad situations, especially when things start to happen to the property. So yeah, that goes once again. My biggest thing as far as investing is buying correctly. Buying average is not buying correctly. Buying correctly is putting me in a situation, if things do happen, I have enough cushion to be able to go ahead and move forward.
And I even think knowing the average deal to do your numbers off of slightly below average, because if your market, if you think about a BRRRR for a rental or you think about a flip, by the time your project is done, your market may have declined. And so I always run my numbers on a rental or I run my numbers on a flip. So I always make my rentals a little bit nicer. Like I over improve them and my husband makes fun of me. And on my flips, I over improve my rentals. I over improve. So I usually can get a little bit more, but I run my numbers slightly below the average just in case the market's bad or the market stalls when it's on the market for rent or for sale. And so if I make more and the market stays good, that's great. But I've ran my numbers off of below average.
I knew it. I was just gonna say I'm waiting for Brandon to chime in on this one. So he just commented because this was a question that was brought up in the school community, and there's been so me and Brandon are actually going to cover this topic on our Tuesday live stream. But someone asked, the question was, would you rather buy one great deal or four okay deals? And that kind of got a lot of different responses, and Brandon kind of touched on what both you're saying, that you, Gus, is not, if you're buying just average, you're not really, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but it's kind of like, you only buy great deals in a sense, Brandon was trying to say. So I knew he was going to chime in with a response here, but he said, you make your money when you buy and use low market rents in your underwriting.
There's one thing I would say about that, especially being a new investor.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes new investors, depending on where you are, from what I hear with people throughout the country, their opportunity is buying somewhat around average deals to get into the game. So now when you're more seasoned, I know you're going to go ahead and you're going to clamp down. You're only going to buy great deals. But when you're entry level into the game, sometimes you may have to look at it a little bit different. I'm not telling anyone to just, overpass the average deals and just jump into great deals. Sometimes you may buy average deals, would teach you on your next purchase to buy great deals.
I also want to know what the delta is from great to average, because this is a subjective question. And talking about, Gus, you had said earlier, some people stall and they wait and they wait. And when I do these, we do the accountability calls and we do the Zoom calls throughout the week. And I've heard a couple of times people saying, I want a really good deal. Or as a realtor, clients, I want a really good deal. I can't tell you handfuls of deals that I have sent to my clients and said, hey, this is a great one. And I never compete with my clients. So I always try to send them to them first. And I've bought properties that people have said, no, because of this, no, because of this. I'm like, yeah, I've given it to all my clients. They don't want to, I'm buying it. And it is a good deal and no one wanted to buy it. So sometimes people have unrealistic expectations. And if you looking for a great deal, passing over good deals makes you not get in the market for 3 to 5 years. How much time in the market did you lose? So I just want to put that on there too, because some people are kind of like, they just never get in because they're looking for the perfect thing.
Yeah, I think definitely that was where a lot of the responses were to that question in school. So they were kind of touching on, are you just getting started? Do you have a lot of cash on hand? How seasoned are you? But definitely, I don't want to dig into it too much because then I won't have a live stream. I won't have a topic on Tuesday. But me and Brandon will probably touch on that so let's see. Step 7. Before we get,
I'm sorry, Mark. One more thing.
No, go ahead, man.
Can people? Sometimes I feel like people, they're standing on top of a mountain, and then they're talking to people from below, and everyone's but we can't do it like you. We don't have all the resources like you. I think there's a gradual growth that gets to the top of the mountain. And I think sometimes when we get deeper in the game, we tend to forget that. That's just the last thing I want to say.
Yeah. Brandon, get off your high horse. But we'll talk about
No,
it
that's not
later.
what
No,
I
no, that came from me. That didn't come from you. So like I said, before we move on to step 7, there was someone that had a question, I think, for Gus. I saw your podcast. Dope. 70 plus doors is crazy for me. What is your goal from here? Does it change over time?
My goal is to continue to keep working. I feel like, and I'll put it in I use this comparison. I'm a athlete, in the NBA, and right now I'm hitting my prime, and I'm doing well. There's no telling when I fall out of love with it, just like I fell out of love with being a real estate agent. So when that time comes, then I'm going to know to switch. But right now, I've been waiting my whole life for this situation, as far as to be able to find techniques, find these properties, have the crew, be able to fix it, have the lender, be able to do the right refi, be able to know how to find renters. I don't want to stop right now. I'm on a roll. Why would I stop? Is my thinking. I know people are like, well, if I make 30,000, I'll be good with that. Why stop at 30,000? Why not go for 40? Why not go for 50? And then why not down the line? I start cutting the fat on my portfolio. So right now I'm in acquisition mode, and it's going to last for a little bit.
So you don't have, so obviously you love in the game of it. So, I mean, I've heard Marc and people talk on their podcast about it's a means to, they don't love real estate. It's like a means to an end. Right.
Yeah,
and my husband always tells me like, what's wrong with you? Like, when are you going to stop? Sounds like you're just enjoying what you do. Do you have like a number? Like, okay, when I get to this many properties, I'm just going to start trying to pay them off and not buy more. Or are you like, I'm just going to keep buying them as long as they make sense to buy?
I'm going to keep buying till it makes sense to buy. I think So there, and I'm glad you said that, Emily. There's a difference with people who just do this and then people who love it. I love finding deals. I love going in and rehabbing a place and making it to turn out. And there's nothing wrong, but there's people that have passion for it, for the art of it, and there's people who are just looking at it as a business. And I'm on the part where I have passion for it. Every day I wake up and I say, what's the next thing we got to conquer as far as real estate?
And I think that's kind of our first step. Well, I can't remember which one it is. Why are you getting into this? What do you want to do? Like, me and my husband talk about this all the time. Like, there's going to be a point where I don't need, like, I never want to retire. I just don't want to have to. So I'll still be doing it. I'll still be renovating houses. I'll still be buying properties. But and he's like, there would be a point. He's like, I'm good. Like, I don't want to do anymore. And so I think that's why it's so important to know yourself and know what you want to do, because people are different. Like, some people just love the game of business, and like that, I would be bored. Like, what am I going to do if I'm not doing this, And so I got to be doing something. But some people are like my husband, he's like, I'm going to go sit on a beach. Like, I'm done. And you're saying, and I agree with you, like, no, like, this is fun. I want to keep doing this.
And I think people got to hear that, you know what I mean?
And it's okay to be different.
Huh?
It's okay to be different. You just got to you got to know what you want.
Sometimes I get sick of the same cookie cutter answers. Oh, well, you got to get to this number. No, I love it. This is what I love to do. So any of that other answers, I'm never going to give that. I'm going to give what I truly do feel.
Yep.
French Montana just says, Gus, my Nigerian brother doing big. He's such an inspiration to me. Thanks for being real, brother. There was before, let me see. There was. I know. Before we go to step 7, which is pre-approval, I want to make sure everyone sees Emily's 2 YouTube channels in the chat and Gus's Instagram. So please go follow them there if you haven't yet. Subscribe, follow them, connect with them if you want to know more information on Wyoming, Maine. They're both agents there also. So if you have questions, reach out to them. So step 7 is pre-approval, right? So what's your guys' thoughts on that? And maybe why do people shop houses before shopping loans? I think that's a common thing. Oh, I see Gus shaking his head. What's your thoughts on that then?
Yeah, I don't know why people do that. And I'm trying to tell them, hey, let's get pre-approval so we know where we're at. So right now we're window shopping. And I don't like to window shop. I'm not going into a place just to look at stuff. I'm going in, if I'm going to buy something, I'm going to buy it. So I think, honestly, people are scared to get the information. Whether
they don't want the truth.
Yes, whether hey, you can't afford that $500,000 house, you can only get 400. And I think in the back of their mind, like, well, if I find the place first, then I'll go ahead and get approved, and I'll have my fingers crossed. No, you got to be prepared, and we've been talking about this whole podcast. When you're prepared, you're in a better situation. So if we're looking for if we know that we can afford a $300,000 house, we're looking at $300,000 houses. When we find the right one, we could buy it. When we're not prepared and we're looking at 500 and then we get it pre-approved and you can only afford 300, then we're devastated. You may not even buy a house after that.
Yep. And if you're in a competitive market, the person that looked at it yesterday and has their financing in order, they're putting an offer in today. You go look at it today and you don't even have your financing in order, you don't have a pre-qual or a verification of funds. If they want to move fast, they're throwing your offer out because they have someone who's prepared. So, first of all, it's showing the seller that you're prepared. And Gus, I saw you shake your head, and I think that's because we're both agents, because people always want to look and then I'll get my financing. Like, no one's even going to look at your offer if you don't have your money in order, right? That's why that was an earlier step in our 12 steps of Christmas. And then the other thing is sometimes people like the idea, but they don't understand how a monthly payment works. So I have actually had clients that are pre-qualified, but have not had those in-depth conversations with their lender. And I'm sitting down to put an offer on a property with them. And I give them the estimate I'm required to give them as a realtor. And they go, oh, that's what my monthly payment is going to be. And it's like, they're pre-qualified, but they didn't look at the numbers. And then they go, oh, never mind. Yes, I'm qualified. I can buy this. I don't want to spend that much every month. And then they either decide not to buy or they start all the way over at a different budget and they don't like anything at $70,000 less because they just looked at more expensive houses. So there's no reason to do this until you have your money in order.
Facts.
There is a question from French Montana. It says, Emily and Gus, you both said we have to look on paper to be able to get fundings. Could you please walk us through that?
I think
so just want to throw out there, none of us are lenders on here. So this would just be kind of based on our experiences and maybe helping clients, but no lenders on this panel, right? So, but yeah, go ahead, Gus.
Just to make sure, saying that we have to look good on paper for the funding, could you walk us through that? That's the conversation I think me and Emily were talking about as far as speaking with the lender. They're going to let you know how you look on paper. We could talk before that, making sure your credit is good, having X amount in the bank. But the person who's really going to determine that is the person that you speak to, who's going to be able to give you the money to buy those properties. And that's the lender. So that's how I would answer that.
And I think there's so many different loan types. So if you're looking at a conventional loan, which if someone's buying a primary home or their first few investment properties, that's probably what they're looking at. And so, and when I mean conventional, I'm talking about anything Freddie or Fannie backed. So government or, whatever, standard loans. So this could be I'm talking about FHA, conventional, rural development, if those are allowed where you live, but they're going to have a debt to income ratio you have to fall within. You're going to have a certain credit score. They have this whole parameters for their underwriting to be able to do a loan. But there's also for investors, there's DSCR loans, which look at the property. You have to have a certain amount of reserves, meaning cash to pay the payment for the next few months. But they're more worried about the property cash flowing than they are about your income. But you have to have a certain credit score. You have to have some reserves. And then there's even, there's like bank statement loans. So people that maybe haven't had a job, it's going to be a higher interest rate. But you hear about these in places like Vegas, where there's a lot of, service professionals where they have high income, but it might be really high in certain months and super low in certain months. But on average, you have a certain amount in your bank account. They're going to look at that you always have a certain amount available. So maybe you're a stripper and you make a ton of money, or you're a bartender and you make a ton of money, but you're not consistent, but you deposited it into your bank account and you're paying taxes on it. There's a type of loan for you. So that's the thing too, is that you might not go the conventional route. You might have to pay a little bit higher interest rate. But if you have a weird situation, as long as your credit's good, or you're not like, hey, you didn't pay a mortgage and you're in foreclosure, but you can have a foreclosure or a bankruptcy and still get a mortgage. I think it's 2 or 2.5 years later. I can't remember what the rule is. So there are options for you. You just might have to make a plan, but starting with talking to your lender and figuring out what that plan is, or, hey, we don't offer those type of loans, but this person down the street does, and that might be the best bet for you. So there's a way, but you got to know where you're at to get your starting point.
Brandon, who's an agent in Texas, Dallas area, He also does build to rent. He's also going to be speaking at the One Rental at a Time event in Vegas. And he's my, like I said, he's my regular Tuesday live stream guest. But he says, I never showed anyone unless they had the pre-approval. It screened my activity to work with serious buyers.
I will meet somebody once because a lot of people do not have financial literacy education and people just don't know. And not everybody has that blessing to have had parents that taught them that or learned about it on their own. So I will meet with a client one time. We'll look at houses. We have the conversation. I answer any questions they have. I give them a bunch of numbers for lenders. And then if they're like, yeah, no, we don't want to do that yet, then I say, okay, you get it figured out and come back to me. And sometimes they go to other agents, but you can't just keep showing stuff like that for no reason.
Okay, so I'm going to give an answer. I don't know if people are going to like. I know agents are not going to like. When I quit my job and I became a real estate agent and I was talking to whoever, I didn't have any business. So maybe I didn't have the skills to funnel people out. But the one thing I did is I showed as many properties as possible, maybe to people that wasted my time. But here's how I look back on that. Those people connect, even though we found out that they weren't able to go ahead and buy the home, they connected me to people down the line because I took time out to show them a place that people who did buy me the home. Now, once again, there's a difference between someone who's already a vet and they already got business going to someone who just quit their job and they're trying their hardest to find a penny. And when I'm trying to find a penny, I'm going to do anything and everything that makes sense to go ahead and figure it out. So I know that's not the popular thing. I used to bring it up in meetings. People used to frown upon it. I don't give. Back to you, Mark.
But I think when you're, like you said, when you're starting, you're trying to build contacts because maybe their coworker, their neighbor, their friend wanted to buy a house and you treated them respectfully. I think that, but when you were the year you sold 105 houses, you probably didn't have as much time to do that. But when you're starting,
yes.
Right. So it's different when you're starting or the clients you're willing to deal with or the deals you're willing to take on. And then when you're doing 75, 100 houses a year, you don't have the time to do that if they can't buy.
I see someone wrote their team sold 250 houses, and that's a huge accomplishment. I sold 100 by myself, so it's a little, it's a little bit different. Everyone has their own ways that they go about things.
Yep.
Before we get to Flavio's question, we'll kind of lump maybe step 8 and step 9 together because I think they kind of relate to each other. So analyze daily and make offers. I think this is kind of the next step where it's kind of like, okay, things are getting real a little bit, right? So analyzing daily and making offers. Do you think people though actually analyze deals or they're kind of just scrolling through listings? So Emily, what's your thoughts on that?
I think maybe some people spend too much time analyzing deals. Again, doing our calls, sometimes I analyze this, I analyze this, I analyze this. Okay. And, so sometimes people what was that noise?
What the heck was that?
My cat's not in here, so it wasn't my cat.
What was that, Gus?
I think that's my dog. He bit the toy. I didn't know you guys heard it, but I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. I was wondering what it was, though. That's what happens when we live stream. It's all good.
But I think people can get an analysis paralysis. I think it's good to know. I mean, like once you get going, you can kind of tell, I think if you know your market and you know your numbers relatively quickly, you can go too far with it and spend too much time with it. Some people do these spreadsheets and they're crazy and it's like, what are you even doing? So I think you get to the point where you should be able to do that relatively quickly. So first one was analyzing properties. And then the second one was offers. So I think in this market where we're declining, but some sellers are accepting our market has declined and they're selling their properties and some have not. And so those properties are sitting. I do think you're just putting in a lot of really, I'd say, they're not low for the market. They're low for sellers' expectations. And you have to put a lot of offers out there to get bites, right? And so it's, hey, throw it at the wall, see if it sticks. If it doesn't, move on to the next one. And so I think in the market we're shifting into, you just have to be throwing stuff out there and then a couple are going to bite.
You never know what's going to fall in what stuff on the market. You don't know what's going to fall in your hands later on or for how long they sit on the market. So analyzing that particular house to a deal that works for you, have that on your side. And as time goes on and that house is just sitting, you're talking to the agent or the seller like, hey, so what's going on? And here's the thing people don't know, especially if you got an agent. A lot of agents going to be like, well, they're motivated. Oh yeah, they're motivated. Well, how motivated? They've been sitting on it. Make an offer. They're giving you clues. I don't think that's the thing. People tend to know if you're not an agent. A lot of agents give other people clues, and people could sit here and lie and say that's not true. That is 100% true. I've been able to go ahead and close a lot of deals by just them saying certain things to me. It's like a wink of the eye. Hey, if you offer that, there may be a good chance. So just to throw that out there.
And agents, if you have a good agent you work with, you start to know, because agents have rules about how much you can share and disclose if you have a fiduciary duty to the seller. You're the seller's agent. And I know which agents are going to talk way more than they should, and I know which agents follow the rules. And so I can call and say, like, hey, I don't want to ask you to do anything that you're not comfortable, or what they haven't, or sometimes their seller has give them permission to share more. I just, for instance, listed a house. My grandmother passed. We got her house ready to sell and listed it. I had a lot more liberty, because it was my family's house, to share what they had given me permission to share, rather than an agent that's just an agent that doesn't have the connection to the family. So it doesn't hurt to ask. And so, like you said, Gus, having those conversations, or knowing this agent is telling me everything I know she's not supposed to be telling me, but I know she will. And that one's a stone wall, and they're not going to give me anything. And and you can fill it out. So having a good agent who has good relationships with other agents really can do a lot for you.
100%.
How many deals do you think someone should analyze before making their first offer? Like, do you think there's a certain amount or how much time they should spend, or no? Just be comfortable with it, you think? Just comfortable with the numbers that they're running?
And your market might be smaller.
Yeah. Why do you think people are so emotionally attached to making offers? Like, I hear it a lot. Like, people are almost they don't want to hurt someone's feelings, or So why do you guys think that's out there?
I think people want to be liked. is my opinion, and I'm not in the game to be liked. I'm in the game to go ahead and make sure me and my family are put in the best situation possible. So sometimes that makes. I've had situations where my client is like, well, I don't want to offend them. Well, they put the house on the market. You know what I mean? If anything, I'm taking the heat, because once I tell that agent, hey, they're looking to offer $50,000 lower, the agent tends to get mad, and they're getting mad at me. They're not getting mad at you guys. They're going to go back and tell their client, hey, this is what they offered. And their client's going to make their decision based off that. So I would say most times it hurts the agent more than it hurts, the buyer. But even when you buy off-market deals, and you go and you see their house and they tell you a number, and hey, 90,000, and you're not going to offer anywhere near a 90,000. I might offer 40,000. There's a bunch of work. I tend to make that offer with the information of what I have to do. So to give it validity of why I'm making this particular offer. But at the end of the day, I'm not afraid to make any offer, and I don't care about anyone's feelings when I make that offer. And I don't mean that rudely.
I think there's a lot of strategy that can come with the tending to the emotions of buyers and sellers. I think that, and I'm sure Gus sees this as an agent, watching the feelings and the emotional roller coaster that your clients go through. I strategically sometimes will watch houses that are priced too high. Like you talked about, houses that sit on the market. I know I'm in a small town. So a lot of times, a little bit more about, their mom just passed and the family's selling the house, and that house is overpriced. And so I'll call that agent sometimes. And if it's a talker, do you think if I offer this right now, because the agent knows this price, would it be better for me to offer it now and say, hey, I understand you guys want more. If you can get more, that's great. If not, if you come back to me, if I haven't bought something else, my money's still available, I may be willing to do this in a month, 2 months, if you come back and it hasn't sold. Or am I going to put such a bad taste in their mouth because they're not ready? They need to see that house sit on their own to realize their price is off. Should I offer it now and leave it open, or should I just wait a month, and if it doesn't sell, should I come back? And that agent maybe says, you know what, I don't think they're ready for that. Come back in a month if it's still available. Sometimes there's strategy, especially if it's because, the thing I always tell my clients, if this is an auction, if this is a foreclosure, the bank is just numbers. They don't have feelings. If you lowball and they don't like it, they're going to say no, and you can come back again. if you really want that property and you lowball a person who has feelings and emotions about the house, I have had some very emotional clients who, even though you're right and their house is mispriced, they're so pissed off that when you come back in 6 months and it's still sitting, they hate you, even though you were right. And you should have just waited until they realized, oh, this is not reasonable in this market. And so there's some strategy, because as an agent, there are many times I give people all the data and all the comps to price their house. They disregard everything I tell them, all the data I provide them, and price it way too high. They don't want the truth, you know? And so the emotional piece, there's a lot to that. And there's a lot that if you can get additional information, you can time it and play it. Because people have a lot of feelings about houses, especially if they're a family home, and you can kind of finesse it if you can, if you can play the game.
Flavio is saying, Emily, sell me that script. But yeah, so let's see. We make so step 10. I think this is probably the one step that really causes a lot of new investors stress, or someone trying to get that first rental property, right? The due diligence portion of it. And I think, Emily, you're with your background in being a contractor, I think this probably has helped you. But how do you help your clients when going through the inspection report, or do you see them stressing about this portion of the process?
What's been your experience, Gus, as a realtor?
For investors, I think first, if you're being an investor right off the get-go, inspections are important, very important. And you want to make sure that the major things are okay, in my opinion. But what's the game plan for the house? Is it, are we coming in? Are we going to be doing rehabs? If that's it, then, some of the things we know we have to go ahead and fix. Is the game plan, you plan on doing no rehabs? You're going to move into, let's say, a duplex, and the person upstairs is going to be paying part of the mortgage, and it's a turnkey ready home. Then, when we look at the inspection, we're going to look at it in more detail, because we're looking at it as a turnkey house. Me, myself, what I'm a big fan on, if it's going to cost a lot of money, let's go ahead and negotiate it. If it's going to cost, like, if it's a foundation, if it's a sewer line, if it's those particular things, we may want to think about dropping the price extremely low or walking away from it, depending on what your pockets look like at the end of the day. So I think it's case by case scenario. One thing I do see is an inspector is there to write every single thing that's wrong with the house. So sometimes someone gets that report and like, oh, this is the worst house ever. And I'm trying to tell them, hey, it's not that bad. The doorknob just goes left instead of going right. That's an easy fix. You know what I mean? So sometimes it scares people away. But I think if at the beginning of your career, you need to know what's wrong with the building, and then you can pick at things if you decide to go with the building for long term. Hey, these are things we can improve because we have this whole report.
I think it's a tricky process as an agent, when you are guiding someone through the process. It's kind of like you're their real estate spirit guide, right? It's their decision, it's their money, but you're kind of advising them. But it's hard because I never want a client to feel like I'm making you feel like these things are not a big deal because I want you to go through with this transaction. But in my market, at least, I don't feel like a lot of the home inspectors do a good job of explaining what a home inspection is. And so I try to prepare my client. Like you said, they get a 70-page report and they freak out. Well, guess what? Everyone is 70 pages because it has a picture of everything and it points out, so I try to prepare them. You're going to get this really long report, or you should, and it's going to explain everything wrong with the house. And houses have stuff. And it's crazy how people freak out about really small things. And so you don't want to minimalize something if it's minimal. But sometimes, I'll have a buyer and it is a clean inspection and they withdraw from the purchase. And then I'll have this one that's like, dang, I wouldn't even buy this. And they're like, no, it's fine. I can fix it. And so it's really interesting how people respond to stuff. But sometimes I'm just like, what are you complaining about? This is fine. But I am finding in this market where things are tricky and buyers seem to be a little more scared. They like the idea of buying a property, but maybe they don't actually want to. And I am seeing and talking to agents and talking to the inspectors, people are backing out on inspections right now more than I have seen in a very long time because I think they have cold feet and they just want an out.
I think the one thing I want to touch on is it's okay to walk away after the inspection.
Sure.
I think a lot of investors, they get to this point and they said, I've gone through and I've talked to my lender. We got the contract signed. I've been through this whole process, and it's like now the inspection comes up, and they almost feel obligated to proceed. So, but I just want people to know that it is okay if there's something you don't like or something that doesn't sit well with you. It's definitely okay to walk away
That's the whole
after the inspection. Yeah, definitely. I think that's the one. Just do what's right for you and don't feel obligated to have to proceed just because you got to this point in the process, right?
Yep.
Let's see. Step 11. We're getting to the final two. So step 11 is systems after closing, right? So let's say you did all step 1 through 10. You finished the process. You got your property, and now people seem to think it's all over, right? People think now you think I'm a landlord. I am going to make money, all this money, and let's buy the next one, right? So what's your guys' mistakes that you see people doing? Once they close, I guess in a sense.
So I'll let Emily go first, and I'll follow up.
Man, I guess I don't have what I would say are mistakes, but I would say even before you get to closing, you've been through your due diligence, you're going to close, make a plan so you're ready to start actioning the things that you need to action very quickly as soon as you close. So maybe you have contractors lined up because say you're getting flooring installed or something like that. Get it measured before, have it ready so they can start work. Because if you either bought it in cash, you bought it with hard money, you bought a traditional loan, so you have a month before you have a payment due, it'd be nice to have it rented pretty quickly. If you have everything lined up, there's a lot you can do quickly. First thing I do is I go in and we're going to change the locks because I can't tell you how many people don't change locks on houses. I have sold one house like 4 times, maybe it's just turned over a lot in the years. And I get the same key back every time someone buys and sells that house with my little handwriting on the little thing. And I'm like, how many people have access to your house for safety? So now as a landlord, you are liable if someone gets in there and, has access to their home. So I change all my locks. I go to the quick set smart key. I love these. They're so easy to rekey because basically if you can't get a locksmith and you need to change your locks really quickly, you can buy new sets of keys and use this tool to rekey it yourself. So I put everything on quick set smart key systems. Get landlord agreements in your name. So if the utilities get shut off or something in the middle of winter, your gas is still on and your heat is still on, but don't wait till it closes. Have all your plan ready. Go in that day and at least stabilize the property, get it secured, all that type of stuff, and start actioning. Have everything planned before. So I guess it's not like what mistakes, but like start that day.
And
Absolutely.
I think you also got to understand, you got to know what's your plan of attack. And you should know this before you even put in an offer. Are you going to be the point of contact? Are you going to be the landlord? Are you going to have a property management team? If you're going to be the landlord, are you going to be the direct contact? Are you going to have programs like Buildium or whatever else out there for them to go ahead and make their payments? These are things that you got to be prepared to do. You got to have if you're going to be the property manager, you got to have a letter that's ready to post on each tenant's door that you're taking over the building if it's already an established building. So these are I had someone call me and they didn't buy it through me, so, and then they were like, "Hey Gus, I just brought the building. So what is the first thing I do?" I'm like, "Wait, what? Like, what do you mean the first thing?"
Realtor, you should use me.
So I would never say that, but in my brain, I might have been thinking it like, "Yo, so you went with them, like, you know what I mean?" But be prepared. Educate yourself. Going back, making yourself a weapon. Be prepared as soon as the excitement goes and you're signing those documentations, your hands are in the air that you just closed. What are the next following steps that you have to go ahead and accomplish?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's also why working with the right agent is probably super helpful, right? There's probably a lot of agents out there that Gus, you just touched on, right? They're probably taking that photo of handing them the keys and that's the end of it for that agent, right? They're done. You got your home and now you're on your own. But there's agents out there that are probably going to walk you through the process, right? So that's also why dealing with agents who are investors are probably super helpful for people trying to get their first rental.
Yes.
Before we get to the final step, then Bill is asking, how long have the quick set been out? Just found them this summer and was like, how did I not know about this?
Right? I mean, right? There's one locksmith in my town. And so when I need to change locks, the other thing too about those is great. You know how you can buy lock sets, and a lot of houses have a front door, a garage door, a back door, and like lock sets. I think they only come in 2s or 3s. Well, you need 4 or 5, and you want them to all be on the same key, but you don't want to pay to have those rekeyed. You can buy all the sets and rekey them to the same key. I've been using them for, I want to say, at least 7 or 8 years. I don't know how long they've been around, but I swear by those. Yeah, maybe longer. They're great. Big resource as a landlord.
Hey, Jennifer, Hold It with PM Jen is tuning in from LinkedIn.
Jen, my
She
spirit
she says speaking my love language, never buy without a plan. I meet people who buy and after closing are still unsure about their plan. Just loses you money. If those of you don't know who Jen is, she was on a couple weeks ago. Great live stream. Emily was on and Jeff was on. But she has a YouTube channel. Hold It with Jen, or Hold It with PM Jen. She's all about the buy and hold process, buy and hold forever. But she'll be joining me on Wednesday again.
nice.
On the live stream, and I believe Zuber loved her reel that I put out, and she was talking about, hey, I want to be mean, and as a property manager in a sense, and Zuber said, get me into contact with her. So Zuber, hopefully she's going to be on Zuber's channel shortly, but she'll be here on Wednesday. So let's wrap it up then with the final step, the first 90 days. So step 12. So would you say is the first 90 days where investors are made or broken? Emily, any thoughts on that?
No, because it's exciting and new in the first 90 days. Anybody can do anything when it's exciting and new. It's like you start a workout plan, you start a nutrition plan, you have to be consistent for the rest of your life. And so you are going to set the systems in place, but like once it's not fun and it's not shiny and the new has worn off, are you still going to be a good landlord? Are you going to look for the next deal? So like that's just the beginning, but no success is ever then. Are you still doing it in 5 or 10 years? So no.
Yep. I think when the first month and the rent's coming in and you saw potentially what everything costs, and that's when you get hit with the reality. Did all that preparation, is this a reality with the money? And that goes back with the experience. Oh, I didn't account for this. I didn't account for that. I didn't account for up here for 3 storms, winter storms that cost $150 total. That's when you start getting hit with reality that this is not a game. This is real business that we're doing. And I think, if you could last the first 90 days, I think that gives you a 20% chance of being better. But after a year or 2, you may not even be in the game anymore. And that's just how it's built.
Absolutely. And I think even less if you don't have a plan, right? To like what Jennifer was saying, right? If you go into it, buying without a plan, probably your success rate is very low, right? Because you're not expecting a lot of these things, or you put yourself in probably a very tight situation, whether it be the margin on it or, just buying a deal that may not make sense, right?
And I just say
yeah.
one thing.
Cool.
I want to talk about the importance of reserves. I know we talked about this a little bit. Again, I see so many people on TikTok. I bought with no money. I did this. I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just saying it's not wise, because I have had 2 properties in the middle of winter that I bought, and the furnaces went out very shortly after I bought them. And maybe it's a repair, maybe it's a replacement, but then you have frozen pipes. You potentially have water damage. Things just happen. No one was trying to hide anything from me. They were just older houses with existing furnaces, and things like that can happen. So are you prepared with all your numbers that you've built in? If you have a $7,500 furnace replacement 2 days after you just bought that house, put your money down. You have to prepare for things like that as a landlord. Even if it's ready to go, it's not a flip, it's ready to rent. You have to have money set aside, because things like that can and will happen.
And just to build upon that also, I hear a lot of people like, I want to do what you do and I want to quit my job. Your job is very important. What we do as investors, it takes years to get to a point where you can potentially leave your job to live off, I don't really recommend that, but to live off of what you're doing as far as investment wise. Mm-hmm. So once you buy your first investment, the smartest thing is not the smartest thing is to quit your job. You need your job to be able to bring in income, to do what Emily just said, to be able to go ahead and put money back in that building. So we definitely got to keep that in mind. This is not a quick get rich quick scheme. This is a long-term thing as
And
far as
I want to
investing.
point out that this is somebody with 70 something rental properties who's telling you this. So you think you have 3 properties and it's smart to quit your job. I mean, do what you want. I'm not here to tell you how to live your life, but, and I'm sure he's scaled back, but Gus has 70 something rental properties and he's still selling real estate. So maybe you find a job or an income that you can balance with investing better. Maybe being at an 8 to 5 doesn't make sense when you have a lot of properties, but Gus is still selling real estate and working with 70 something properties. So getting 5 and quitting is probably not the best strategy.
Not at all.
Very great advice. And we'll kind of wrap this segment up, part of it, with Janet on Fire. So, if both of you being agents and closing on deals, he says, I watched a video of a realtor who paid for a locksmith on every deal they close. Do you guys do anything special for your clients when you guys close deals?
So I love that idea, but I live in a small town with one locksmith with one guy that sometimes answers the phone. And so the way that I could never coordinate that, because a lot of times sellers are there till the last minute and buyers are coming in, like logistically, there's no way in my small town I could do that, but I love that. Usually there's something specific. So something always comes up in a negotiation that the seller doesn't want to pay for, or the buyer doesn't want to pay for. So a lot of times I'm just paying for a last minute fix. If not, I'll do like a gift card or something like that. But usually there's something I have paid for to make the deal stay together that they don't even know about, which I should tell them so they know. But a lot of times there's things on the back end that I'm paying way more than what a locksmith would charge just to make a deal not fall apart.
I agree.
Free buffalo wings for a year?
Well, probably more than that.
I agree with Emily. There's sometimes some things that we're sacrificing just to get it to the finish line. Like you know, something might come up from the seller. Hey, you know, this came up. I was like, okay, how much is it? The $300. All right, no problem. I'll take care of that. My buyers had enough stress upon them, and that's all I can. You know, when we're agents and people are picking us to buy these homes, we should be very, very grateful. You know, because we make good money buying these homes. So for me to get, there's one time, and I'll tell the story really quick. The day of closing, they went to go do their no, actually it was after. They didn't even do their walkthrough. They went after, and the whole basement was flooded. And so, you know, everyone, the seller and the buyer, the seller's like, well, you know, you should have had your walkthrough, and the buyer's like, well, this is how you turn. This is not how we sign on the documentation, how the house should be turned over to us. So it was a lot of this and that. And I think the dopest thing is, me and the other agent said, hey, you know, we made this amount. If we put this amount together and pay a portion, because some of it was covered through insurance and things along, if we pay this small portion, everyone will be happy. And I'm like, you know what, bro? Let's go ahead and do it. And we did that. Now that to me goes a million miles of me buying someone cookies or cupcakes or any of that stuff, because those people tell our name for the rest of their lives as far as what we did to get them to the point where they were both satisfied.
All right. I think this was a great episode, you know, the 12 steps. So hopefully people can get some good information from these 12 steps and get their first rental in 2026. Like I said, please follow Gus and Emily. There is Gus's Instagram, Emily's YouTube channels. But Flavio did have a question. So before we wrap things up, he's asking, how is impacting your lifestyle, I guess, having rentals money-wise, I guess. So I think, Gus, you touched on too. You're not going to just quit your job just because you have a few rentals, right? But now that you have 70 doors, you know, some extra income coming in through the rentals, how is it changing or impacting your life?
I'm going to say the good things. My wife is able. My wife my kids are 4 and 3. My wife's able to stay home. You know, that to me, that's the biggest thing. We don't have to trust anyone else with our kids. We're able to stay home. Another thing I would say is we're financially stable. I'll put it that way. I don't know if you guys remember, you guys used to work jobs and, you know, you would get this $700 check, or maybe it was more with you guys. And that was already accounted for before it even got in your hand. I think with this, it puts me in a different situation as far as I know that my expenses are taken care of, that, you know, I'm not in a place where everything can be snatched from me or my lights are going to be turned off. So this is what real estate has been able to do for me and my family. Yeah, do we take trips? I haven't. So before I got into real estate, I didn't take no trips. I took my first trip last year as a family. So that was 6 years of just putting my head down and grinding. I didn't do anything else. I didn't want to do anything else. I want to be able to get money, put it back into the business. I took my first trip. Everyone's like, "Gus, you're making all this money. You da 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 da." It doesn't matter what other people are saying. To me, the most satisfying thing was I had my kids on the plane. Everyone was super excited. And in my head, it's like, Daddy worked his ass off to get to this particular point. Even though maybe I've been a cheapskate or I've been super frugal, but this right here is the payoff. And they had so much fun. And to me, that's what real estate has put me in and the position it put me in.
I think Emily is smiling because she knows what I'm going to say, because I think you set yourself up for this, Gus. So because you're taking a trip, will you be in Vegas for the one rental at a time event in February?
Yeah. I'll be talking to my wife about it. I think the hardest thing is, hey, babe, I'm thinking about going to Vegas. Like, maybe to you guys that's normal. To me, I'm like, Vegas.
Bring your wife. It's Valentine's Day weekend. Just bring her with you.
All right, we're gonna have that
Make
discussion.
the trip. It sounds fun.
Mark, I like how you did that. Okay.
That's what I thought Emily was smirking about. I think she felt that was the way I was going to head into this.
No, I just realized I have not a friendly face. What do people say? RBF. And so I have to intentionally try to smile so my face isn't like, and I'm not wearing my glasses because the lights. And so I look like I'm glaring, but it's just, so I have to intentionally. I have a question for Gus while we have him, because Gus has scaled. I mean, obviously when you got into real estate, you put in a lot of effort. And you, I would say, are more successful in real estate than most agents are because you did the work. And so you probably had a great income there. But you have scaled a really large amount in a short amount of time. And so what would you leave us with? What is there anything that you feel like someone that either wants to get into investing or wants to grow faster than they are? What are there things that you live by? Are there things that really worked for you? Like, give us anything that you feel like you should pass on to us with the growth you've had, because I think it's very abnormal and very great.
You got to be able to go ahead and have no limitations when you get into the game. So to be able to have all this success, I guess, you got to be able to hear that information from as much people as possible. And you got to go ahead and put the pieces together. What works for you? You know, some people told me not to do Zillow. And I was like, okay, but if I put $200 each month down and I get 3 deals and that brings in $8K, how is that a loss? And, you know, there's some gripes with agents in Zillow, but you got to think to yourself, what makes sense in the long term? And I always took a step forward on things that's going to produce money back to me. I didn't go out. I didn't party. I didn't do any of those things. I think, so there's a few things. This community that I'm in school, I think it's phenomenal. I talked to 3 people already on phone calls. Picking those people's brains is what makes you better. And I know this is the 3rd time I'm saying this. Making yourself a weapon is what's going to help. Well, the first time I heard about business credit, I'm like, what is business credit? I don't even know what that is. I asked my banker about it. I was like, hey, what's business credit? He's like, oh, business credit is when you have a line of credit and then you could use that. So can I get one? And this is already when I had 6 houses in. I was still studying to what can go ahead and make me better. Once I found out about business credit and I was able to get a bigger line of credit, then I was able to go ahead and take off. Okay, how do I know how to do a rehab from top to bottom? I started calling everyone. So what are your steps? What do you do? What do you do? Every single time I'm implementing feedback that I'm getting from other people to be able to put me in this position to possibly win. The last thing I would say is I'm very competitive. So Emily, when I got on your page, I'm like, okay, what does she do? What is she going? What's going on? I want to know if I'm in a space with someone else, how I should prepare myself. And I don't want to see Emily ever do bad. I want her to be as successful as possible. But when someone's being as successful as possible, I have to meet that metric. I may not pass them. I may not even be around them, but it's going to make me better. So I think in hindsight, I'm wired a little bit different than other people. I come around, I want to be the best. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way. But as long as I strive and do my hardest, I'm going to be somewhere around there that's going to go ahead and make me better. And the last thing I'll say is, Mark, I heard you say this. If the 5 people the closest around you is going to dictate who's you. So if I'm around people who are killing, murdering in the game, that means a lot of that is going to rub off onto me. So if I'm around people that are making 200, that have 200, 300 units, my measly 73 units to them looks small, but to everyone else, they're like, Gus, you're killing it. So it's all about hindsight at the end of the day.
Hyder just wants to say there's this guy, Larry Leopard. He's a macro analyst, and I guess he has a stinky fart face every time he's talking. I think on Emily's point of having a RBF, she said. But Kay Barnes also, hey, thanks for stopping. Says great interview, very good questions as well. Yeah, thank you. Hopefully hit that subscribe. Come back. I'll be live streaming tomorrow. Tomorrow's gonna be my weekly recap of Bitcoin with Coach Nick Massey, lead pray hodl. So if you want to know more about Bitcoin Weekly, come follow, check us out tomorrow. We'll wrap it up with one last question for me, I guess, for both of you. So you guys both kind of touched on school. I would say that maybe, hopefully you don't take it the wrong way, but maybe you guys are somewhat outsiders from the core of the one rental at a time community, in a sense, from the original people, and you folks are maybe new members to school. What would you guys tell to other people out there looking for a community? What would you guys take on the school community one rental at a time? So Emily, maybe you can go first.
So I think and I've talked about this before, finding a community that has shared interests with you. Me living in a repetition, every time you ask something like this, I'm going to say the same thing, but I don't have really that many real estate friends in my community. I'm in a pretty small town. We don't have real estate investor meetups. It's not like I have all these people that I can sit and talk about real estate with. Like Gus, like you said, you kind of went and did some research. I always want to make sure I know who I'm talking to. So like when I listened to your podcast, you said you were on I can't remember, Clubhouse or something. And yes. So you talk about everyone around you, about a deal, and they're like, oh, that's scary, don't do that, oh no, whatever. And then you go there and they're like, yeah, do it, and if you don't want it, I'll buy it, and so you have people that aren't living in fear and are doing it. Or if you have this many properties and you feel like, no, I'm good, and someone has this many, it encourages you to strive more. Cream rises to the top, or whatever the phrase is, And so if the people around you are really striving, it encourages you and kind of eliminates the fear, because they're doing it and it's working. I can do it too. So I think just the power of having a community, especially if you don't have that in your area, you might have to find it online. That's what it's been for me, of just finding people I can talk about real estate with on a regular basis and get ideas and have a sounding board and encouragement off of one another. That's what I love.
A lot of the people that were on here that were saying, Gus, they know me. They're actually from this 25 people Clubhouse group that we're in. And we started about 4 years ago. It's not like we all know each other. We all we had a similar interest. It was real estate. And every morning we meet up, we talk of what you're doing, and this tenant problem, this. So my wife doesn't want to talk real estate every day. I'm like, so babe, so we just got this house. We're going to get 150,000 equity. And she's like, okay, so do you want to watch Sopranos now? I'm
like glossing over, trying to be nice and listen.
But that's not her thing. You know what I mean? So I can't blame her. She has her own things. That's her thing. But when I get around people that enjoy real estate, and they're ambitious, they're looking to push forward, that goes ahead and helps me. Hey, so I'm thinking about doing this new lock system that I heard Emily say. What do you got? Have you got any of you guys used it? Yo, I used it. This is what I did. This is what I did. So now I have a group of people I'm bouncing ideas off before I go ahead and I implement that information. So school, when that I just recently joined, when we're having those Zoom calls, I met the gentleman from New Jersey. I forget his Jack, I think his name is.
Yasik the bully. I mean, Yasik.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's phenomenal. That's a guy I can see myself talking to a lot and picking his brain. He's straight shooter, my type of guy right there. That's the type of guys I like. And so to meet people like that are in different regions is only going to add on to what I'm getting from my other platforms. So I'm very thankful for school.
Very cool. Flavio agrees. That's why he joined school. Can't talk about real estate around my family reunions. If anybody else, Hyder did put the link. If you want to join school, check it out. It's only $20 a month, no commitment. You can always cancel after 1 month if you don't get any benefit, don't enjoy it. But yeah, come check it out. So that's how Emily, Gus, and I connected. I think it's a great community. Once again, there'll be an event in February in Vegas. Come check it out there also. But Emily, thanks for doing this every Friday with me. And Gus, we'll hopefully get you on the regular schedule, maybe get you on a certain day. But I think a lot of people had a great time. But
Yeah.
Everyone, hopefully see you folks tomorrow with my weekly Bitcoin wrap up. But have a great rest